Mercedes was brimming with optimism ahead of the race, boasting two cars positioned at the forefront of the top three lineup. Russell even shared his excitement about working together with Hamilton to take on Verstappen, generating significant buzz around the event. However, this enthusiasm was short-lived, as on the very first lap, George Russell and Lewis Hamilton made contact, leading to Hamilton's premature exit from the race and Russell's subsequent pit stop. Mercedes appeared utterly stunned and disheartened, their race hopes dashed right at the beginning. During the Qatar Grand Prix, there was a collision between Mercedes drivers Lewis Hamilton and George Russell at Turn 1. This incident has raised questions about how these two drivers will handle the situation moving forward, especially since Hamilton has taken responsibility for it. Hamilton, being the more experienced driver on the team, acknowledged that he should bear the blame for the incident. However, it's worth noting that his admission of fault wasn't entirely explicit regarding what happened at Turn 1. Interestingly, Hamilton mentioned that Russell had suggested they work together today because they were starting the race on different types of tyres. After the race, it seems that Hamilton might have watched a replay of the incident, which he hadn't seen before talking to the media, and he tweeted that he believed it was entirely his fault. This suggests a clear acceptance of responsibility on his part. The incident and their future interactions are likely to be closely watched and discussed by motorsports enthusiasts. In this situation, Lewis Hamilton might believe that George Russell shouldn't have positioned his car where he did. Hamilton was on faster tyres and was expected to pass Russell with better grip. This misunderstanding had significant consequences for Mercedes in the race, so they will need to plan their strategies more effectively in the future. Looking at the incident itself, it's not clear what else Russell could have done. Hamilton didn't have enough speed or take a wider path to successfully pass on the outside of the corner. It might have worked out better if only his main rival Verstappen was there on the inside. However, when three cars try to fit into one corner side by side, it often leads to problems, especially for the car on the outside. Hamilton made a risky move by turning in front of Russell's car and then claimed he was taken out. After the incident in Suzuka, where both Mercedes drivers had a close performance, it seemed like an accident could happen eventually. Now that it has occurred, Mercedes needs to figure out how to handle the aftermath in the right way. Hamilton deserves credit for publicly taking responsibility after watching the incident. Russell, on the other hand, stuck to a tight line alongside Verstappen because he didn't have any other options. Even in his interviews during the Grand Prix, Hamilton's tone suggested that he either had seen the incident or had received input from someone he trusted. This isn't to say that the move he attempted was wrong. It was a valid attempt, but he slightly misjudged it. This incident in the Qatar Grand Prix might be the first time it had significant consequences, but the Mercedes drivers have come close to trouble earlier this season. It was almost expected with two drivers who are very evenly matched. Such a situation was bound to occur sooner or later. Until now, they had managed to avoid major conflicts. However, now that they haven't, it's time for some action to address the issue. Mercedes had a significant opportunity today to widen the gap between themselves and Ferrari in the standings, especially with Carlos Sainz not even starting the race. Unfortunately, they missed that chance. Getting opportunities to beat Red Bull is rare, and starting in the second and third positions may have seemed like one of those chances. However, even if Hamilton had managed to pass Verstappen at Turn 1, he wouldn't have been able to stay ahead for long since he was on softer tyres. Taking firm action doesn't necessarily mean using team orders in every Mercedes race, but it does require the drivers, especially Hamilton in this case, to understand the bigger picture and what's at stake. Mercedes needs to ensure that this understanding is firmly communicated to the drivers. Some are speculating if this incident signifies a change in Lewis Hamilton's career as an elite overtaker or one of the best in close racing situations. In recent years, there have been other moments where Hamilton has made mistakes, and perhaps people were lenient with him because he went from dominating Formula One to facing a challenging midfield competition. However, this incident feels different. Hamilton knew he had softer tyres and that his rivals would have a slower start. The potential for a three-wide situation at Turn 1 was foreseeable. Despite having the option to back off on the outside, he made a mistake. This wasn't a random, unexpected scenario during the middle of the race. It was a move that could have been anticipated before the race. Defending such a move is extremely challenging, and upon reviewing it, it's not surprising that Hamilton eventually admitted he was at fault. Toto Wolff, watching from a distance, probably had a fresh perspective on this incident. On one hand, he might consider it a rare mistake from his star driver, Lewis Hamilton. On the other hand, he might wonder about the surprising lack of precision from someone who's usually incredibly accurate. It's notable that Hamilton's errors are so infrequent that when they do happen, like this one, there's a tendency to scrutinize them closely. What's even more important is how George Russell handles this incident internally. While publicly he has accepted Hamilton's apology gracefully, there could be a temptation not to exploit the situation but to use it to his advantage and end the season on a positive note. This might plant some thoughts in his teammates' mind for 2024. However, this strategy might work for Russell if he had any other teammate in the neighboring garage. History suggests that Hamilton will likely put this incident behind him as soon as he leaves the track today and focus on the next race at Qatar in a couple of weeks. If a similar opportunity arises, he won't hesitate to make a move, perhaps with more finesse. Russell is not to blame here. He made an impressive start, considering he was on the harder tyre and the dirty side of the grid. He had no choice but to back off early to avoid a collision. On the other hand, Hamilton had plenty of space to his left. With his better grip, he should have used that room to either take the lead or secure second place at the very least. The idea was good, but Hamilton's execution was poor. If anyone other than Hamilton deserves some blame, even though he's already taken full responsibility, it might be Mercedes' strategy team. They should have set clear rules for their drivers, especially when they're starting on different tyres and one is on the clean side while the other is on the dirty side. In any case, the right driver won the Grand Prix and the right team secured the other two podium positions. The relationship between George Russell and Lewis Hamilton has been deteriorating since the incident at Zandvoort in 2022, when Russell focused on his own race rather than helping Hamilton. In my opinion, this tension will likely persist unless Mercedes establishes strict rules. Even with rules in place, it's uncertain if it will work because both drivers see themselves as the number one driver and may not accept a secondary role. Hamilton is still taking heat about his radio messages, even though he apologized, and this is why criticism towards drivers right after an incident should be approached cautiously. They only have the view from their driver's seat in that moment, while we have access to various camera angles and replays almost immediately. Drivers make decisions on the track, and they don't anticipate those decisions leading to crashes. This can create bias in their perspective. For instance, from Lewis Hamilton's viewpoint inside the car, he believed he was going faster than George Russell and intended to go around the outside to overtake. He couldn't see where Max Verstappen was because George was blocking his view. When Max took the inside line, George needed to adjust his position, but Lewis was also moving in that direction, thinking George had space to let him through. This led to Lewis initially believing he was taken out by his own teammate because he thought George had room to allow him to pass. However, upon reviewing replays, it became clear that Lewis should have considered the possibility of Max being there. It was a risky move by Lewis, but in the heat of the moment, drivers take such risks. Now that Lewis has seen the same footage we have, he's fully aware that it was his fault. He should have been more cautious and taken a wider angle in that corner. He has apologized for his mistake and suffered the consequences of losing the race and points.